St. Patrick's. It's a small Catholic church in a rural setting just outside the town of Cumming. It's the oldest church in the Des Moines Catholic Diocese. This white frame structure was built 111 years ago, overlooking rolling hilltops of rich Iowa farmland. Irish settlers first came here in the mid-1800s to escape the potato famine. They built this log cabin in 1852 as their house of worship. By 1868, the settlement had grown to nearly 50 families, the McLaughlins, the Hanrahans, the Kings, and they decided to build a new church.
In 1868, you have to remember that most of the housing around here was log cabins, and to build a church with plank wood, it was a little bit different.
It was during the Civil War period. The old church site became the cemetery, and even today tombstones show St. Patrick's is steeped in Irish heritage. These early Irish settlers made their living off the land. They were God-fearing, hard-working people. Today, life is much the same for the 204 parishioners at St. Patrick's, who are descendants of those early settlers. Most of its congregation still lives off the land and worships here on Sunday. After Mass on Sunday, they still gather out front to share the week's news. What's new this week? The Pope, John Paul II, has decided to visit here.
It's hard to believe that he will actually be here, and it really is an honor.
Well, we've been pinching ourselves for several weeks now, but we finally, I guess, begin to realize it might be a possibility, but quite a thing, really.
Oh, I think it probably will be the most exciting thing that will ever happen to us as a parish and as individuals.
How long has your family been in this area?
My husband's family has been here since 1856. His great-grandfather walked out from Des Moines to buy the farm from the government.
I understand your grandfather helped build this church.
He helped pull the lumber here to build this church. And he's buried out here in the cemetery, and I got several uncles and aunts, a couple of brothers and sisters that's buried out here.
This is the second stop for Pope John Paul. Officials of the Des Moines Catholic Diocese say the purpose of the Pope's side trip is to meet people of rural America. How will the Pope's visit change this area?
This little church here in the heartland of America will become famous because a lot of people are going to know that the Holy Father is coming and that he will have been here.
Well, I hope it doesn't change the area too much, except in the area of spirituality. I hope it really increases the already deep spirituality of the people here.
The Pontiff's visit to St. Patrick's may not change the way of life here, but it's obvious his visit won't soon be forgotten.
You know, it's one lifetime thing. There's only been 2 in the United States, counting him, and it's never been in Iowa.
I think it'll be really neat to see him, and it'll be good for him to bless the church.
Susan, are you going to be here when the Pope visits on Thursday?
Yeah.
Is it going to be fun?
Yep.
That was a profile of St. Patrick's out near Cumming, prepared by our Debbie Cutter. Debbie is out at St. Patrick's with Kevin Neiswanger. We'll be there in just a few minutes. You can see over my shoulder the helicopter carrying the Pope on its way right now to St. Patrick's. This is really the private audience, so to speak. Only the 205 parishioners of the church, 204, are there, and the rest of the people. Only 20 members of the local press and 20 members of the national press, so it'll be a relatively quiet 40 minutes the Pope will spend out there near Cumming. We also have Joe Hayes. At one time, there was a possibility of going out to St. Mary's and Immaculate Conception Church. Joe Hayes, the Truro farmer that actually invited the Pope. But as it turns out, of course, he went to St. Patrick's because of, I think, of the vistas, for one thing, the fact that it's the oldest church in the Diocese of Des Moines, and truly a beautiful setting. You were able to see some of those aerial shots, and, of course, inside, the live cameras out there in just a few moments you will see. Ice cream social after his brief meeting, too, before he flies from, in that Marine helicopter from St. Patrick's out to Living History Farms. There are about 300,000 people waiting on him there. He will say a Mass and deliver a sermon. We, by the way, will carry a special program, The Pope in Iowa, tonight at 8 o'clock here on TV5. We invite you to watch that, or if you know someone in your family wasn't able to watch all of this today, it will sort of be a wrap-up of the day's activities here in Iowa and hopefully a perspective on what this means. Truly an historic day in Iowa. And as they said, people are interesting is the word. I certainly don't want to be critical. They were out yesterday. There's a new little white path of stones up near St. Patrick's, and some people were out there yesterday taking the stones. And we were setting up the camera gear out there. They were taking bark off the trees, just anything they can get their hands on. There, of course, people commercialize this visit of the Pope. They're around with T-shirts. One fellow had a frozen some fruit on a stick, called it a popesicle, and they've got bumper stickers and just about everything you could imagine. All right, there is St. Patrick's Church. Debbie Cutter, Kevin Neiswanger are anticipating the touchdown in a few moments of John Paul II. Folks?
Yes, Ed, we're out here at St. Patrick's. Most of the parishioners, the 205 parishioners, in fact, are waiting inside the church right now. No sign of the helicopter as yet, although the members of the press are now gathering in the area of the landing site. And as you will soon be seeing, there is sort of a fall view of that landing site. Inside now, you're viewing members of the church, the parishioners, who have been waiting here, most of them, since about 11:30 this morning. And when they arrived, they brought all kinds of home-baked goods for the after-church visit they are going to have with the Pope. And as I said earlier, it's a very unique visit here because at the other sites, the Pope has been seen at a distance from a lot of people, and these people will have the opportunity after church, as they have had, has been the tradition for over 100 years at St. Patrick's, of visiting with him on a one-on-one basis. And there you can see the helicopter is approaching now the St. Patrick's area.
Debbie, this truly is a very unique experience here. As Ed mentioned earlier, it's going to be more the private type with just the parishioners and the press, a small amount of press on hand. As you can see on your screen now, the Pope is coming to the landing spot right now. Touchdown in just a few seconds.
None of the parishioners will be excluded from the visit, and the church will seat everyone, including those small members of the press. Well, the helicopter now has landed. The Pope will be greeted there by the Connors family and their 6 children, and the daughter of the Connors, Teresa, will be taking a bouquet out to the Pope to greet him.
Pope John Paul just landed at the landing site right across the road from St. Patrick's Church near Cumming. And now the landing party is starting to disembark from the helicopter.
Still quite a wind out here. People are rather bundled up, and as you can see there, many of the parishioners now have been told that the Pope has arrived. The children anxiously awaiting, as we told you earlier. They have been gathered out on the lawns, talking excitingly about how they're going to see the Pope close up. And they're actually going to be able to walk up and talk to him at length minutes on end and when they gather out front in the church. Inside the church, the Pope will give a prayer. He will be greeted by Bishop Dingman, who will give about a 2-minute welcome speech to the Pope. And in that center chair there, the red one, right in front of the crucifix, is where the Pope will be seated. To the left, Bishop Dingman will give his welcoming speech. You can see there are some of the beautiful stained glass windows, 5 on each side of the church, which have been here for quite some time. The church was originally built back in 1868, and as Kevin mentioned, the first church here was a log cabin built back in 1852, and there's an exciting historical background around this rural setting, which is about 16 miles southwest of Des Moines. The closest town to St. Patrick's is Cumming. Population only of about 189 people, very small community. Approximately about 40 homes. And all the parishioners here, though, none of them live in Cumming. They are all farmers who live in the rural area surrounding the church. The earlier helicopter we saw was members of the Secret Service, and we believe now that the Pope will arrive.
Yes, that's right, Debbie. That first helicopter was carrying press and members of the Secret Service. This is the Pope's helicopter that's landing right now.
The helicopter has landed in Alfalfa Field, right across from St. Patrick's Church, approximately 250 feet. And that field, again, owned by the Connors family, who will be greeting the Pope as soon as he walks out of the helicopter.
Pope John Paul II expected to emerge any second now from the helicopter that just brought him to St. Patrick's Church near rural Cummins. Coming.
Arriving with the Pope will be Bishop Maurice Dingman, who will participate in the ceremony and welcome him here into the church.
St. Patrick's Church will, in essence, have the chance to become the cathedral church for the Des Moines Catholic Diocese. It's selected last month as the third site that the Pope would visit in Iowa, along with the Living History Farms and, of course, his stop at the airport.
And there we see the Pope emerging from the helicopter, getting ready to go into the St. Patrick's Church, approximately 250 feet away.
helping with them. And I've been getting those nosebleeds, you know? Like suddenly a nosebleed and hard to stop. Kind of Jerry Jones.
In the background now you can hear the bells of St. Patrick's Church welcoming the Pope. He shakes hands to members of the press and other people gathering around him. The green carpet that you see there will in fact be divided up among the 205 parishioners who are gathering here to visit with the Pope as a memento of this historic occasion.
As Debbie mentioned, there are 205 parishioners. Just a few days after the Pope announced that he would visit St. Patrick's Church, there was a new arrival.
Again, here I just want to point out the Pope had been presented a bouquet of flowers from Teresa Connors, one of 6 children of the Connors family who owns the alfalfa field, owns the farmland on which the Pope's helicopter has landed right across from the church. In the background you can see the farm equipment, which goes along with the theme of the Pope's visit here, the rural setting. The Pope, now surrounded by his entourage, will walk up this green carpet across the dirt gravel road, and through the gate of St. Patrick's. As Kevin mentioned, there was just recently a newborn child born to the parish, the 205th member, Justice John Banks, born to 29-year-old Carol Banks and Days Banks. And they had asked that the Pope baptize the child, but of course the schedule, very tight, and a rigorous schedule that the Pope has been under, he was unable to do that. You can see now the shadow. They're passing under the gate of St. Patrick's, and they will walk approximately 150 feet before they enter the church. This whole area now, as ironically as James mentioned, suddenly we have a lot of sunlight, whereas earlier kind of a chill around the area, still a little bit windy now, but suddenly sunlight has come over the area. To the right of the Pope is Father Bognamo, who has been very busy this week with the plans of this visit to St. Patrick's. And to the left, Bishop Maurice Dingman.
You can see they're approaching the church, walking down the last few feet, going to the front door, where they will be greeted by the parishioners that have already been seated inside.
A lot of historical background about this church, as we pointed out in the earlier feature. Again, it was built back in 1868. People have come to this church, the McLaughlins, the Hanrahans, over 100 years. And out behind the church there is a cemetery which has many of the tombstones, the original Irish settlers who came here. And inside are the descendants of those original settlers who came here to homestead from their native Ireland. The Pope was very excited about making this stop here in rural Iowa. Very different than from some of the larger cities that he's made, and of course very, very unique, because he will be able to speak with these people on a very one-to-one basis and visit for a much longer period of time than some of his other stops, both in the U.S. and throughout the world.
As Pope John Paul II begins to enter the doors, we might mention that St. Patrick's Church is the oldest parish in the Des Moines Diocese and has been placed on the National Registry of Historic Places. It was selected earlier, as we said, by planning parties that came to Iowa to try and plan things in advance, and the rolling countryside and the quaint setting seemed to be what the key to having St. Patrick's as the third site for the Pope's stop.
Now the Pope blessing the church. You can see the altar boys gathering in front, and to the left is Father John Richter, who became pastor of this church about 3 weeks ago. Incidentally, the center altar boy, Mike McLaughlin, a seminary student himself, about 22 years old. The other young men there were selected by lot on the opportunity of serving as altar boys for the Pope's visit. You can hear now the applause of the parishioners, knowing that the Pope is just about to walk down the aisle of St. Patrick's.
Stopping to bless certain individuals within the church. As we said, this is a very personal and private type service where he's able to meet with individuals within the church. Pontiff is now making his way toward the altar, where he's scheduled to say Mass and give a short sermon before coming outside for an ice cream social. Rather chilly day for ice cream socials, and at the same time he'll be able to meet once again with members of the parish before departing for his next stop at Living History Farms.
Again, these people, descendants of the original Irish settlers who came here over 100 years ago and have gathered in the church for these many years with a very rural type setting and visited with each other, both during and after church.
They're all Irish. All Irish. God bless you. I visited Ireland. There's a seminary. Before coming to you, I visited Ireland. But Pope John Paul II is
Your Holiness, welcome to St. Patrick's at Irish Settlement. And as I indicated to you, these people are all of Irish extraction. They have been here about 130 years, and the parish is 127 years old, and the building itself, the church, is 100 years old. Your Holiness, this is a very special occasion because you're not coming to the Bishop's Cathedral. You are coming to St. Patrick's at Irish Settlement, and I know this pleases the people greatly. And so I want to introduce to Your Holiness the people of St. Patrick's Parish at Irish Settlement.
Very nice. So I
some of the younger members of the crowd.
Dear brothers and sisters, it gives me great pleasure to be here today with you in the heartland of America, in this lovely St. Patrick's Church at the Irish Settlement. And before I visited Ireland, before coming here, my pastoral journey through the United States would have seemed incomplete without a visit, although short, to a rural community like this. Let me share with you some thoughts that this particular setting brings to mind and that are prompted by my meeting with the families who make up this rural parish. To proclaim Jesus Christ and his gospel is the fundamental task which the Church has received from her founder, and which she has taken up ever since the dawn of the first Pentecost. The early Christians were faithful to this mission which the Lord Jesus gave them through his apostles. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of the bread and the prayers. This is what every community of believers must do: proclaim Christ and his gospel in fellowship and apostolic faith, in prayer, and in the celebration of the Eucharist. How many Catholic parishes have been started like yours in the early beginnings of the settlement of this region? A small, unpretentious church at the center of a group of family farms, a place and a symbol of prayer and fellowship, the heart of a real Christian community where people know each other personally, share each other's problems, and give witness together to the love of Jesus Christ. On your farms, you are close to God's nature. In your work on the land, you follow the rhythm of the seasons, and in your hearts you feel close to each other as children of a common Father and as brothers and sisters in Christ. How privileged you are that in such a setting you can worship God together, celebrate your spiritual unity, and help to carry each other's burdens. The 1974 Synod of Bishops in Rome and Paul VI in his apostolic exhortation Evangelii Nuntiandi have devoted considerable attention to the small communities where a more human dimension is achieved than is possible in a big city or in a sprawling metropolis. Let your small community be a true place of Christian living and of evangelization, not isolating yourselves from the diocese or from the universal church, knowing that a community with a human face must also reflect the face of Christ. Feel grateful to God for the blessings He gives you, not least for the blessing of belonging to this rural parish community. May our Heavenly Father bless you, each and every one of you. May simplicity of your lifestyle and the closeness of your community to the fertile ground for a growing commitment to Jesus Christ, Son of God and Savior of the world. I, for my part, thank the Lord for the opportunity He gave me to come and visit you, and as Vicar of Christ, to represent Him in your midst. Thank you also for your warm welcome and for offering me your hospitality as I prepare for my encounter with a larger group of people at the Living Farms. My gratitude goes in a special way to the Bishop of Des Moines for his most cordial invitation. He pointed out many reasons why a visit to Des Moines would be so meaningful, a city that is one of the major agricultural centers of this country, the headquarters also the dynamic and deserving Catholic Rural Life Conference, whose history is so closely linked to the name of a pastor and a friend of the rural people, Monsignor Luigi Rigutti, a region distinguished by community involvement and family-centered activity, a diocese that is involved together with all the Catholic bishops of the heartland in major effort to build community. My greetings and best wishes go also to the whole state of Iowa, to the civil authorities and to all the people who have so generously extended to me a hospitality marked by kindness. My greetings goes also to your parish priest, who is standing there, near the door. May God bless you through the intercession of Mary, the mother of Jesus, and the mother of his church. Thank you very much. Blessing, for the blessing. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Sit nomen Domini benedictum.
Ex hoc nunc et usque in saeculum.
Adiutorium nostrum in nomine Domini.
Feci caelum et terram.
Benedicat vos omnipotens Deus Pater, et Filius, et Spiritus Sanctus. Amen. Very nice.
Thank you, Father.
Debbie, I think Pope John Paul II may have cut plans short just a little bit to try and make up a little bit of the time. He is running about a half hour behind in schedule. Things are running along very smoothly now. I think he may try and cut his visit just a little short here to try and get back on the schedule if he can. He talked with parishioners just now, mentioning the simplicities of their lifestyles, saying that their type of a rural community gives more of a human dimension, praising them in that line.
To the right of the Pope now, Father John Richter, who the Pope referred to earlier inside the church. Again, right now, they're going out to an area left of the church where the congregation here has gathered for decades as their descendants to visit after church on Sunday.
The Pope has donned a wrap, perhaps because of the chill in the air here. We've mentioned before, it is rather cool. Brisk wind seems to want to stay with us. The sun has snuck behind the clouds once again. And the group is now going to assemble for a picture that will include the Pope and the entire congregation.
Again, members of the parish approaching the Pope, getting a chance to shake his hand, be blessed by him. The children especially seem to have been looking forward to this visit more than any of the other adult parishioners. One thing, Debbie, I think I've noticed is you may have at home watching the smiles on the people's face. The joy can be felt in the air, the exuberation of the people. I think some of them still can't really believe that it's happened to them, that the Pope is here visiting their church, blessing them, talking with them. It truly is a very unique experience. It appears now that they are going to head back towards the helicopter, as Kevin said, probably trying to catch up a little bit on the Pope's rigorous schedule. And they have fallen behind by some 30-40 minutes. Again, one of the newest born members of the congregation, 205th member, Justice John Banks, born just a couple weeks back, September 23rd. And there you see in the foreground, let me just mention, Father Bognamo, trying to clear the way for the Pope so he can make his way back to the helicopter. You can see the children gathered there, very excited about meeting the Pope up close, and for a much more extended visit than many of his other stops around the country and the world.
Okay, I see.
The group has now made its way to the gate outside of St. Patrick's Church, where We believe they may be trying to take that group picture right now. It does appear that the Pope is going to depart shortly.
Father Deese, what can you tell us about the Mass? What will we be seeing as the Pope arrives here?
Well, I think what's going to happen is that there will be, once the Pope is vested, it'll take some time for the Pope and the bishops to vest, but once he's vested, I think we'll just get started right away with an entrance hymn, and the Pope will come in with, I think it's the Iowa bishops, isn't it?
Yes.
And along with Archbishop Quinn and Archbishop Roach, the president and vice president of the National Conference of Catholic Bishops, who will be celebrating with them. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the 8 seminarians from Des Moines. And
that should proceed directly and on schedule. What everyone will be listening for, aside from the thrill of celebrating Mass with the Pope, is, of course, his homily. And so far as I know, we do not have any advanced text of what he's going to say in his homily, do we?
No, I haven't seen anything. I would expect that it'll again be something that would relate to the land question, something that would relate to rural community. That seems to be the major reason for his coming to the Midwest. But I'll be looking forward to that.
We had shown you earlier, you saw at the airport the porcelain statue which was presented to the Pope, and you saw the painting of a rural scene in Iowa which was presented to the Pope, and actually a number of gifts will be given to the Pope on behalf of the Archdiocese of Des Moines and other Midwestern groups and citizens, and many of those gifts were submitted to a special committee which chose a number of representative gifts. They were on display yesterday at the Des Moines residence of Bishop Dingman. They include a selection of letters from people of all ages around the Midwest. There's the painting, which was the gift of the Archdiocese commissioned for this visit. Somebody put together a collection of experimental seeds from Iowa's study farms, and donors hope the Pope will give those to other farmers in other parts of the world. And there's also a couple of gifts from the city of Rochester. One a book on its history, the other a book on the Mayo brothers, and all these gifts have been shipped out to the Des Moines airport, and they'll be packed on the papal jet for that trip back to the Vatican. And we asked them at Bishop Dingman's residence the other day, you know, realistically, what can you expect will happen to these gifts? And of course, nobody thinks that the Pope personally is going to hang on to them and get them out every Thursday or Friday afternoon and show them to his friends over tea. But they do expect that in some cases, he will pass those gifts on to other people as special mementos of his trip to the United States, and particularly of his Des Moines stay and his visit to what he has already referred to as the heartland of America. But I thought those seeds were particularly interesting because they fit, again, very well with the rural theme and the agricultural theme of this visit, and I think it will be fascinating to try and learn whether those are actually distributed to farmers in other parts of the world, because we have to remember that there are many other parts of the world where those experimental seeds would be viewed almost as miracles, where the agriculture that we take for granted here in mid-America is a model for the world, where we have succeeded and others have not yet had the opportunity for the technological advances and the experimental agricultural advances that are almost commonplace at the major universities throughout the Midwest, at least those which have anything to do with agriculture and the training of people who will continue to work the ground. And I was thinking, Father Deese, about, we mentioned that the diocese is just trying to raise money to help defray their expenses of all this, and the Pope is talking about returning to the land, and the bishops are talking about in their draft returning to the land and living a rather simple life. And caught up in all of that, you tend to always hear some discussion of the wealth of the Catholic Church. That here comes the Pope, who lives in the city-state of the Vatican, which is, I think most people imagine, surrounded by riches, and he probably plays with gold baubles and diamonds and emeralds and rubies before he goes to bed at night. Well, what is the wealth of the Catholic Church? What kind of an issue is that when on the one hand you're telling the people of the land to keep a simple life?
It's an issue that comes up with some regularity, as you know, and I guess it was a year ago or so, Newsweek estimated the endowment behind the Vatican, which would subsidize the operation of the Vatican itself, is somewhere around $50 billion. which I don't know where they got that figure, but that was considerably off. And in fact, I think a lot of people would be willing to argue that an operation as large as the Vatican, employing 3,000 people in the central offices there, should have an endowment close to that size to generate just the funds they need to operate. Because right now they are eating into their capital to operate. Their endowment is closer to something like between 1.5 and $2 billion. And their operating budget, I think, is about 100 million. And that's less than Georgetown University or Notre Dame University. It's about 1/3 the operating budget of some of the larger evangelical operations in this country. So it's really a fairly modest budget. I think they would like to have a much larger endowment so they wouldn't have to be eating into their capital. But I think one of the reasons that the estimate is so high is because people count the value of something like St. Peter's, but that's not income-producing property unless you were to take St. Peter's down and build condominium apartments or something there in St. Peter's Square, which obviously is, I don't think, in the offing.
No, it is, that certainly is a visible asset, and that's a problem that you can even see at the local level in any community in which you live, in which there is a significant structure of the church that is listed as an asset. It is very real property. There is a building on it. It has to have a value of some kind.
It has a book value, but with the Catholic Church and other churches, it's not income-producing property, but in fact, it's property that is, in many cases, it's liability. It's a hospital or a school or a church, and so I think that's probably where some of these really high estimates come.
Pope John Paul II is now airborne, leaving St. Patrick's Irish Settlement. Another roar from the crowd goes up behind us as they have just been informed on that loudspeaker system that Pope John Paul II is in the air. He is on his way here, and he should be here in about 10 minutes. That loudspeaker system, by the way, created some problems the other night. Monday night, after we arrived, they were testing the loudspeaker system, and they started testing at about 9 o'clock at night, and the testing went on until about 1 o'clock Tuesday morning. Now, there were a couple of reasons for that, we understand. One reason we heard is that a couple of the men working on the system had, for one reason or another, been summarily dismissed from the Sheraton Hotel, which is right across the street. And we had heard a story that they had decided that since they had been thrown out of the hotel, they would do their testing at night to see how that would affect the hotel's visitors. Well, it did affect some of the hotel's visitors. They made a statement to the newspaper that night that they were testing the system at 12:30 in the morning because it had some bugs in it which had just developed, and they wanted to get those worked out. And the great quote of the next day was a fellow who lives about 2 miles from here said that as of 12:30 Tuesday morning, 2 miles away at his home, there was nothing wrong with the system at all. It sounded perfectly clear to him in his bedroom.